So a welcome to Volunteer Iowa's Day at the Capitol training webinar. Appreciate everyone being with us today, and we're looking forward to your participation in this event as well. We ask that you put questions that you may have as we provide this information in the chat, and we will answer your questions at the end of the webinar. We welcome your questions and we welcome your input. We're just going to hold off to discuss those till the end of the webinar. Thank you. Here's the overview for the day and the presenters that will be joining us from Volunteer Iowa, and our a state senator that will join us as well, and the agenda for what we're going to cover. And I'm going to turn it over now to our commission chair, Chirian Koshi, to share some more information about the day at the Capitol. Chirian.
Chirian, we're not hearing you yet.
How's that sound?
You're good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mary. Sorry, I'm new to these video chats, so I appreciate all of you being here. Thanks so much for everyone who's live. I'm super excited to speak with you today. And for those of you who are on the recording, you're missing out on all the fun that we're having, but we're grateful that you're watching the recording with us. And so for those of you who are new, wanted to take a moment to remind you that Volunteer Iowa provides a wide range of programming, funding, and training related to service and volunteerism that has an impact throughout the entire state. As you can see in the chat, we've got people from all over the state of Iowa, which is wonderful. But sometimes our role is behind the scenes, and funders, particularly at the legislature, may not understand how the programs they see in their communities are supported by the work that we all do. So like many others, we host a day at the Capitol as a way to build awareness among legislators about the importance of volunteerism and service here in Iowa and current public policy issues that affect volunteerism. Hosting this kind of day helps us to provide a unified message to legislators while also allowing participants to share their unique contributions, the work that you're doing in your own organization and your own communities. So we want to attract attention to Iowa nonprofits and the volunteer programs that you all help with to give an idea to these legislators or an understanding of what's being accomplished by volunteers and the critical services that could be lost without assistance from dedicated volunteers. So as I mentioned, we're doing this day at the Capitol, and that day is February 2nd, 2020. You'll see the details here on your screen, but you'll also note that some of this information will come to you via email as well. There's a toolkit that you'll receive. I want to remind you that this is not just limited to one day. Although many of us will be on site at the Capitol on February 2nd, you can have meetings with your legislators before, during, after, whatever the case may be. And if in person is inconvenient, doing a call or virtual meeting is a great idea. So just be mindful that you can do that work. Now, we're posting a registration link in the chat at this point. You'll see a Survey Monkey link that we'd love for you to just take a hot second and fill that information out. Even if you would do that right now as I'm kind of going through this material, that would be really helpful so that we know who's planning on participating and can kind of map out some of the back end processes that we'll have to address. Now, a lot of people ask, who should participate? Is it just an executive director or, someone in leadership? And the truth is that any staff member can participate, volunteers, any supporter of your program who can speak to the value of volunteer Iowa and volunteerism in your program and organization should be invited to participate. I know that legislators are really interested in hearing from folks, and so this is a great way to get them engaged. So then I want to talk about why there may be some questions about why you should take part in this day at the Capitol. One piece of this is that we often get worried about like engaging with a legislature, and they're in office, and who am I to talk to these people? I'm just a nonprofit person. At least I felt that way my first time doing this day at the Capitol. And I want to encourage you that this is what legislators want. They want to hear from constituents. They want to hear from people who are having an impact, and they want to know what it's like to do the work that you're doing. There also may be some confusion around what the law allows and doesn't allow. I'm going to address that in more detail. Whether there's potentially some questions around whether your board or leadership support this activity, and then who's the best person or the best voice to be involved in this. And again, I want to remind you that that the work that we all do in our organizations is really important to the quality of life for all of us in Iowa. And so again, no matter what level in the organization you are, your voice is important, and I know that every legislator feels that way. So being able to share your unique vantage point, your lived experience, is going to be really helpful around that. And if there are questions around who's appropriate and who time allocation and whatnot, we can work through all of those kind of details. There's some information in the toolkit, but this is a great way of us working together to lift up volunteerism here in the state of Iowa. So I want to kind of walk you through the logistics of being involved in the Capitol. The first thing is to set up a phone or video meeting in advance of the day, or if you're going to be there, an in-person meeting. So you'll see the link on your screen. You'll get access to that link in your toolkit, but also after this as well. The first thing to do is identify who your legislator is. Sometimes that may change. In my case, that's changing soon. And so all of your legislators are going to be really busy during session, so it may not be possible for you to connect with them on February 2nd. Again, that's totally fine, but it's going to be super difficult to connect with them if you haven't reached out in advance. So if there's one takeaway that you have from this training session, it's that you should identify who your legislator is, and as soon as possible, this afternoon, tomorrow, when you receive the toolkit, there will be a template for the email that you can send to your legislator. And I would just encourage you, as much as possible, as soon as possible, reach out to that legislator and invite them to connect with you, whether, again, in person, on Zoom, or on a phone call. That would be the kind of most important thing that you can do. They'll know that you're interested, and they'll try their best to set up a time with you. The next thing to do is review the talking points and the resources that I mentioned are going to be in the toolkit. Really feeling prepared to talk about volunteers in service and how they're assisting your mission is the most important piece of this. Now, a lot of people feel worried. They think, oh, I don't know all the ins and outs of what happens. But again, your experience, your service, and what you know about the organization and how you use volunteers is going to be invaluable information to legislators. And this is what they're looking for, is to really understand that. So actually, the next step is having that meeting, going through that content, answering any questions. If there are any questions that come up that you don't feel comfortable answering, my best advice is just to say, hey, we'll get back in touch with you. And you can reach out to the Volunteer Iowa staff, me, anyone else, to be able to get that information to the legislator, and we'd be happy to do that. Then follow up after the meeting with a thank you email message, and provide them with copies of your materials from your organization, any of the materials from Volunteer Iowa that you feel are appropriate. I often find that when I'm meeting with legislators at the Capitol, we often take a selfie, and then I post those to social media just to reinforce that they met with a constituent. This was a really meaningful opportunity for them to get engaged in what is truly a bipartisan type of activity. After you're done with that, complete the after action report. Again, there's more information on that in the toolkit, along with the state priorities for Volunteer Iowa and the impact handout. All of those are things that you can provide to the legislator and then and then complete that after action report that says, here's what happened during that meeting. If there is follow-up, that's a good way of our team and the Volunteer Iowa staff being able to connect with that legislator and follow up on anything that's necessary. Then, of course, let other people know about your participation. As I mentioned, social media is a great tool if you're comfortable with that. If you have a way to distribute that information through your email network, we can help you with a press release or a newsletter story as well. Those are great ways of kind of reinforcing what you're doing as an organization. So then I want to touch on for a moment how you can participate, particularly having some restrictions on some folks. And I know that our network includes a lot of federally funded National Service Corps members and staff, and so it's important for everyone to be able to feel comfortable participating in this day, but to do so in a way that's allowable. So if you're unsure about any limits with regard to your position, please just ask your supervisor, whether you're a board member or federally state-funded staff or AmeriCorps Senior Corps member. There certainly are rules around this, and we'll go through a few of those here on the screen, but your supervisor will be able to answer some of those questions. The first and most important thing, you'll see that as the first bullet point there, is that everyone can educate an elected official about an issue that is important to them. So no matter kind of where I stand, I'm able to be able to talk to my representatives about issues that I care about. And you should feel very, very comfortable doing that, especially if you're not talking about particular pieces of legislation or their vote on a particular piece of legislation. You are able to talk to them about an issue that you care about. Most people, many but not all individuals, can engage in what's called lobbying. That's requires that you know the status of your organization, whether and the funding for your position. So again, check with your supervisor. AmeriCorps members may not lobby, so it's important to recognize that. And then again, kind of thinking through the distinction between activities that count as lobbying and those that qualify as educating. In general, that has to do with a specific piece of legislation. So if you're talking about support of volunteerism generally in the state, those are things that are going to err on the side of safety. So as we talk about the differences between educating and lobbying, if you're communicating issues and letting legislators know about your program successes, if you're talking about the need and demand for services, then you're educating the legislator on those issues. Lobbying is when you're combining that information with a specific request for legislation, funding, language, or passing a bill or resolution. Those types of things are going to be on the line crossing the line into lobbying. So advocacy is sort of this general term. Some advocacy might be considered lobbying, other advocacy might be considered educating. It really ultimately has to do with what you're asking them to do, or if there is an ask at all. And for a lot of nonprofits, having worked in nonprofits for all of my life, actually, there's sort of this misnomer in nonprofits that you can't do any kind of lobbying. And generally, IRS rules limit nonprofit lobbying activity, and that's really to prevent a nonprofit organization from forming for the sole purpose of lobbying under the guise of a nonprofit, of pushing through legislation under the guise of the nonprofit. But there isn't actually a ban on lobbying by nonprofits. It's just a limitation on how much of that you can do and where you can do it. So don't feel like if you are a nonprofit organization, you can do nothing with regard to lobbying, but certainly any of the educating that you would do for a legislator is going to be on the safe side. Now, again, AmeriCorps Senior Corps members and staff paid 100% out of federal funds cannot do any kind of lobbying during their service or work hours. Program alums can do that in their capacity as alumni, and members and staff can lobby on their own time. So be mindful of those things, and then I want to go through those talking points briefly for Volunteer Iowa policy priorities. just a ability for you all to kind of feel comfortable with some of the things that we're talking about at a state level with legislators, so you can reinforce that and add in what's happening with your organization. So ultimately, these principles guide our policy work, and then from these, we develop a yearly agenda at the commission level for specific policy goals. So you'll see on the screen there, I'm not going to read them all to you, but we're advocating for policies that benefit the culture and climate of service in Iowa, that helps lift all of our nonprofits in meaningful ways. These also support the infrastructure needed for service opportunities and programs, and develop those service opportunities, and then making those programs streamlined and creating expanding the volunteer base here in Iowa, so that more people are involved in organizations just like yours. So I hope that was helpful. As I mentioned, the most important thing that you can do right after this call, sign up as part of the Day at the Capitol, but reach out to those legislators. Let them know that you are interested in meeting with them and talking to them about the value of service. That's really the most important takeaway. Everything else, I want you to feel encouraged that you have the ability and expertise to share what's on your heart about the work that you're doing. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Mary.
Tyrion, thanks so much for sharing all of that guidance and for highlighting our Volunteer Iowa policy priorities. We will delve into those much deeper in a minute with Volunteer Iowa staff. But right now, we have State Senator Sarah Trone-Garrett on with us, and she's going to share with us some tips from a real live legislator about engaging with legislators during the day at the Capitol. And I need to mention as well that Senator Trone-Garrett is also an AmeriCorps alum. So thanks so much for being with us here today.
Thank you, everyone. I just put my contact information in the chat so you have it. I encourage you to reach out. I'm glad to hear from folks all over the state. And as you heard, I'm an AmeriCorps alum. I was an AmeriCorps Vista in Gallup, New Mexico in 1999 to 2000, and it was the most transformative moment of my life. And in that time, I realized a lot of things about the world that were very different than I had experienced growing up in my small town in Minnesota. And I saw a lot of things about the world that are true for many people, and my eyes were opened. And so being part of national service, you really do get a sense of how important it is for individuals to be part of serving their community and caring for one another. But there are these structural issues. There are these systemic issues that policy can address that will make things a lot better for folks or worse. And so it's really important that we have the public weigh in. And it's really important that we have Iowans be part of the process that's happening in our state legislature. And that's why we need your stories to be part of that. We need you to share about your experiences in national service as a volunteer in your state, so that our lawmakers can understand how important these programs are for the nonprofits, for our wider community, and how it really builds up our citizenship, our community, our neighborhoods, to have folks who have done this work and understand the importance of it. So a few things. When you reach out, it's really important to think about how you're gonna reach out to folks. And so a lot of folks know that you can email your legislators, and I think that's a pretty good way to do it. But I do get hundreds of emails a day during the legislative session. And so emails are helpful, but just make sure that if you're going to email, that you do that with something personal, because I will get hundreds of the same email from some kind of website or advocacy bot. And, I read one and I make note of that, but the ones that really impact me are the ones that share something personal, a personal impact, that I get to know who the person is who's reaching out. Emails are good, but you know what? Phone calls are a lot better. And you can call your legislators. And so on the legislative website, you can find their contact information, and you can find phone numbers. And so I listened. I can overhear what's happening with my neighbors in the chamber. A senator just a few seats down was answering a call about Medicaid reimbursements, and I couldn't help but overhear. And they said, "Wow, I've never heard anyone say that before." Now, what I think they were hearing was something I've heard a lot, but you know, if that was the first time they've heard it, that's really important that that message gets through. And so calling people is a way to share with them in a really impactful way what's important to you. And you know, they might not answer their phone, but leave a message. Some of them will call you back. I always try to call folks back because I'll get 1,000 emails in a week, but maybe just one phone call, and that makes a difference. And then you can also set up a meeting with your legislator, a Zoom meeting, or to let them know that you're coming down to the Capitol to visit it and that you'd like to see them. It's nice to have a heads up. They can tell you what's going on with their schedule. So if you're here, they can say, try to come around this time. I'll be more likely that you can catch me. Or we can set up a Zoom meeting if they're not going to be available. And or even if they are available, it can be a nice way to visit and have that personal connection. And when you show up at the door of the House or the Senate chamber, there is a board out there with our pictures on it. There's a list of what seat we sit in, and you can fill out a paper saying you'd like that legislator to come out, and you hand it to the person at the door, and they'll go see if they can call them out so they can come talk to you. And if I'm there and I don't have something going on at that moment, don't have a meeting, I will pop out and come visit. Today I have to leave a little early because I've got a committee meeting at 1. So these things come up. Our schedules change pretty rapidly, but if we're able to, we will visit with you. And I want you to keep in mind that when you're reaching out to legislators, you don't have to just reach out to your own representative or state senator. There are people making decisions for the whole state of Iowa in these chambers. And so we need to listen to all of Iowa. And so if there's an issue that you care about, that the bill is in the Human Resources Committee, you can talk to the members of the committee. You can email all of them. You can reach out to all of them. The leadership of that committee or the leadership of the Republican Party that controls both the chambers, those are important people to talk to because they need to also hear that message because they're making decisions for the entirety of our state. And, you know, sharing those personal stories, it's just really, really important to bring that across. And I love visiting with folks at the Capitol, but I do it all year round. So even if you don't get the chance during this legislative day, know that we're on the job all year, even though we only get paid for 100 days of the legislative session, and we all have jobs and families and other things going on the rest of the year. We continue to check our email, maybe not as quick in our responses as we should be, but we try to keep up with it, and we like to meet with people all year long. And so keep in mind, if you're doing an interesting project, you work for an interesting nonprofit, invite that legislator to come visit. We like to go on field trips. We like to come visit and see things that are happening in our communities. And that is really impactful too, because we keep those memories and we take them into the session as we're thinking about making laws. Let's see. And I think that's all I've got for you right now. Not sure if, oh, and you know, social media I think is really great. So if somebody has come out to visit with you, tag them on social media, get a picture, share what you shared with them. Share if you got a response. I think it's a way to let other folks know that their legislators are there for them and you're modeling for other people in your community how to be engaged. And there are a lot of Iowans out there that they don't realize what's happening in this building and how it impacts their day-to-day lives, and they don't know how to get involved. And so if you show that you're doing that, people in your community, in your network are going to see that and be inspired to also do that too. And you can let them know how you did it and how to reach out. And I think that's just a really great opportunity for you to teach other people about this process, because a lot of people have never come here. A lot of people have never had the opportunity to visit with their legislator. And we are truly just ordinary people who have wanted to serve our community. And so, you know, we need to hear from you. We need to talk to you because you've got expertise. And it's totally okay to ask your senator for a meeting in the chat, but I'm not going to stay on here long. So go ahead and send me an email and we'll get it scheduled. Okay.
Good call there, Cherry, and way to make the ask right in the meeting. Good modeling. And thank you so much, Senator Tron-Garriott, for joining us today and for sharing your insight. And we really appreciate your service as an AmeriCorps alum, but also your service to the state as a legislator as well. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for all you do. I got to hop off. We'll see you later.
So we are going to cover a Volunteer Iowa policy priorities now, highlighting some of our 2021 accomplishments and then talking about what we're looking forward to in 2022. So Adam Lounsbury, our Executive Director, is going to share some of our key accomplishments. And then Jamie Orozco-Nagel is also going to be joining us for this, this part of the discussion about our priorities.
Thanks, Mary. Before I jump into priorities, just real briefly to cover some of our accomplishments for our programming, which are great to highlight with the legislature. Last year we had over 6,400, I'm sorry, national service participants, a number that dipped a bit with the pandemic, but really is an amazing testament to the number of Iowans serving in a more intensive capacity annually. Iowa members earned over $4.6 million in education awards and almost $44 million since our program's inception. 47.1% of Iowans volunteer annually, 73,000 through our programs, which equals an economic impact of over $1.3 billion, and currently ranks us fourth in the country in overall volunteerism by state. Also, we have over 8,000 volunteers or youth that are mentored annually by our 77 Iowa Mentoring Partnership programs. 13,377 students have been served by our Future Ready Iowa mentoring programs. So that's just a snippet. We also encourage you to share your program accomplishments, what you're working on, what those are. But it's usually a good opportunity to highlight the good work and the amazing impact service and volunteerism has in the state. So that'll turn it to Jamie.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So we're just going to go through a little bit about some of our major program areas and then share kind of what we're looking at in terms of priorities for this session. So in terms of AmeriCorps seniors, formerly known as the Senior Corps programs, there are several AmeriCorps senior programs, but Volunteer Iowa in particular has a role in administering state funding that goes out to the RSVP programs. That's a program in which older adults can provide volunteer service in their communities, and the RSVP programs help to provide that coordination at the local level. The other Senior Corps or AmeriCorps senior programs that are out there are the Foster Grandparent Program and the Senior Companion Program. And while at this time there is not a state appropriation for those other Senior Corps programs, we do hope that they'll all, any of those of you who are listening in on this call would also support our legislative priority in favor of the RSVP program. Oh, and Adam, I don't know if you want to share a little bit more about our priority this year for the RSVP program.
Yeah, just for RSVP last year, we saw an historic increase in growth of RSVP. Over 19 new counties were added, and with that, the legislature appropriated a significant increase in funding to help support that work. And so this year we're really trying to just make sure we maintain that support and growth. We really saw firsthand the value of RSVP in the pandemic. Food pantries in counties served by RSVP weren't seeing the drop off, for example, that other places were, despite the fact that they were serving those affected most by using those affected most by the pandemic. Just the value of RSVP literally saved the state millions of dollars. We had to deploy National Guard and other AmeriCorps members to fill in holes in other places, but where RSVP existed, it really helped maintain that. So just as an anecdote of the value that they're doing every day in the communities across our state, we just want to make sure we maintain that level of commitment.
Yeah. And so just a reminder, any of you could always share. I think, again, sometimes legislators might not even be aware of their role in providing state funding to the program. And so that's something you can always educate them about. And those of you who can make an ask, who can lobby, can support our request of maintaining that funding. Oh, next, we wanted to talk about AmeriCorps programs. So there are 3 main branches of the AmeriCorps program, and Volunteer Iowa has a significant role with both the Iowa AmeriCorps state grants, which we administer to any AmeriCorps state program that operates wholly within Iowa. And we also have our own AmeriCorps Vista program, which serves as an intermediary. So we have AmeriCorps Vista host sites all around the state of Iowa that have AmeriCorps Vista members serving under our program. We are also lucky here in the state of Iowa that we have an AmeriCorps NCCC campus in Vinton, Iowa. That's the National Civilian Community Corps, which is a team-based program. Because of our direct role with AmeriCorps State and AmeriCorps Vista and our supporting role for AmeriCorps NCCC, we have several asks that are related to AmeriCorps priorities. Some have to do with tax benefits that could be of use to any AmeriCorps member in any of those branches, and then some of those are state funding requests that would benefit certain AmeriCorps program priority areas. And Adam can share a little more detail to explain those requests.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, so first off, Iowa, AmeriCorps has a few different branches on the federal side, but in Iowa, in our legislative code, we have, in addition to the overall umbrella of Iowa National Service Corps that includes all the branches of AmeriCorps, there's some state legislatively specific programs that have been created in Iowa code. So with that, I think that first off, with changes in the economy and changes in everything else, one item that we've been pushing for several years now, Iowa became the first state about a decade ago to remove the tax on the AmeriCorps Education Award. Since then, several states have followed. But at the time, there was an interest as well of also removing the taxation on the living allowance. So we kind of fundamentally believe that AmeriCorps living allowance is a living allowance. It's not a wage, and it's not something that the state should be literally charging Iowans to serve. So with knowing that taxation and taxes are going to be on the agenda, they're going to be looking at the structure of it this year. We think this is a good opportunity to kind of bring that up to make sure that when they're looking at those serving are considered, and that living allowance is not considered taxable income. So, which also just makes it more difficult for folks to serve. So I also mentioned that we have a couple different state legislative programs are created by Iowa Code. So one of them is our Refugee Rise AmeriCorps program. Currently, last couple of years, they've been funded at $200,000. They originally funded at $300,000. Received a cut when state funding overall was cut across the state. But with new refugees, as part of the Afghan resettlement needs, and just with overall increases in demand and keeping those services, the commission's position is restoring that funding to $300,000 and to help with that program and the program growth. The last piece is also another legislative program, the Iowa Reading Corps, which currently we have both through a specific Reading Corps program, but also some local programs that are part of the Reading Corps network in Iowa, with an effort that are programs focusing on literacy. Right now, with obviously with program match and schools participating in that, the majority of the program are in areas that have the philanthropic base to cover those. And so there's been the governor's requested in years past, just to look, especially with learning loss needs, and part of the learning loss plan is to get some level of funding in there to support our reading core program to getting into additional counties, so that that's not a barrier moving forward.
And the next area that we support is our work with Iowa Mentor, which supports youth serving programs and coordinates the Future Ready Iowa mentoring programs. And we have priorities in both of those areas. Adam?
Yep. Currently, the state of Iowa does provide two different levels of support. One through our youth mentoring programs through the Department of Public Health appropriation that has funding that goes to support prevention through mentoring. So, while this is something the legislature monitors as part of their overall appropriation, but it is, we ask just the legislature make sure that they maintain that level of commitment, which I believe is about $800,000 now, right, Mary, per year in mentoring, youth mentoring grants to mentoring programs. So at least maintaining that level of commitment to mentoring, and to be fair, the Department of Public Health has increased it significantly over the last couple of years. So just to continue to demonstrate that level of commitment. And the next one is Future Ready Iowa mentoring program. So the legislature, as part of the governor's Future Ready Iowa plan, this is more for college student mentoring. So right now the governor's recommendation is $400,000 for that mentoring program, and so we're just supporting that appropriation to continue to support the work and helping our last dollar scholar and folks have a positive mentoring relationship as they're attending school.
And lastly, we want to cover General Volunteer Iowa support for all programs. Volunteer Iowa administers the Volunteer Generation Fund grants, the Service Enterprise Program, the Governor's Volunteer and Volunteer Hall of Fame Awards and Excellence in Mentoring Awards, and is the lead host of the Iowa Nonprofit Summit. This and our other work in support of community volunteerism is supported by an appropriation from the state legislature for our general operating expense. Adam, do you want to talk a little bit more about our priority?
Yep, and I know we're getting a little low on time, but so yeah, this is just our general operating and something that's usually not too exciting for the legislators and everyone else, but it is something that's important and does affect our programs and programming.